All right. Okay, so today this is just going to be on the fundamentals, the basics of solar. Why does solar make sense? What is solar? What is the benefits of solar? And then why does this even make sense to sell this as a product? Why does it make sense for homeowners? So solar is super simple. Okay, all you need is some panels. There's inverters, and then basically the panels generate power from the sun. And the idea is to get them a system that's going to replace their current electrical usage. So let's say, for example, if there's a homeowner and they pay, or let's say they use 1,000 kilowatts a month. Okay, 1,000 kilowatts a month of electricity is how much power they are using. Now, a year, let's just say it's flat, which obviously it's usually not, but let's just say it is. That's a year they're using 12,000 kilowatts. Now, if this homeowner is going to be planning on using 12,000 kilowatts a year for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, it's a lot of money they're going to be paying towards the utility company. A ton of money they're going to be paying towards the utility company. So if we're able to get them a system, a solar system, that's going to generate 25,000 kilowatts, or sorry, 12,000 kilowatts of electricity, so they can actually get it from their system instead of getting it from the utility company, then it's going to replace their electric bill. So now instead of them having to pay the electric bill, depending on the program you put them on for solar, is they can either buy the solar so they own it, they can finance it, so they take out a loan, they pay for the system over like X amount of years, or they can do a PPA, which we're going to dive into what each of those different programs are and what's going to make the most sense as far as pitching a homeowner on solar to make the most out of your time, make the most money, and also make the most sense for the homeowner. So, just the basics. A homeowner can pay cash for a system. Great. So, if you have a homeowner who's stupid rich and they don't really care, so you can buy the system cash, right? $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, however much, and then they really don't have an electric bill because they have a system that they own that now it's generating enough power that they don't have to really pay an electric bill at all because they literally quite own their power. You know, they own it, which is cool. So usually the way you pitch cash, you pitch on ROI, how many years of you paying your electric bill would it take for you to get that back? Now, most people that you talk to are not going to be in the financial situation to be able to pay cash, obviously. That's why we usually pitch it as a program or a subsidized government program. Generally, though, I would say the best way to do it, if it wasn't for interest rates being as high as they are, would be to do a finance. Now, with a finance, we can actually get people to take out a loan for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I would recommend doing the longest term because then it shows them the lowest monthly payments, which a lot of times that's the best selling point to homeowners is that low monthly payment. So let's say, for example, you use 1,000 kilowatts a month. And for those 1,000 kilowatts, you pay $300 a month. Well, let's say I could get you a solar system. And for the solar system, I can generate 1,000 kilowatts a month. But instead of paying $300, you only pay $150. Cool. And it's on a flat rate. You avoid inflation. And in 25 years, you own your system. That is why solar makes sense. Right? So that's why financing generally is one of the best options. But the problem right now is because of interest rates. Interest rates are stupid high, which is making it extremely difficult for people to finance solar because those monthly payments are a lot higher. Because now we're having to finance these people's system at 8, 9, 10% interest rates because of the market. So ideally, the best way to do it as of right now is going to be something called a PPA. With a PPA, they don't own their system. They don't have to finance anything, and they don't have to pay any money out of pocket. They get the install for free. They get the system completely for free. They get it installed in their house. They don't own it though, but they get the entire system installed. And all they do is they purchase the power that the system produces for a cheaper rate than they purchase it from the utility company. So let's say, for example, you're paying $300 for 1,000 kilowatts. That means you're about 30 cents per kilowatt. Let's just example sake. So if I was to get them a solar system, let's say instead of buying your power for 30 cents, you could buy your power for 20 cents. Which one would you do? Probably the 20 cents, right? Well, cool. The only difference is that the 20 cents per kilowatt comes from solar versus the 30 cents per kilowatt will come from the utility company. And then you sell it to them as a PPA or as a leased program. And the reason why those are so much better right now is because we can actually put an escalation on that. So it just goes up a tiny bit per year, literally just like 2 or 3%. And the initial monthly savings we're able to show people are going to be way higher. So just because of the current market and the economy and interest rates, the best way to go right now is to do a PPA. Now, if interest rates come down and financing with solar makes it, is a little more attractive than it is right now, then definitely financing is going to be number one way to go almost every single time. There's more selling points. You can sell on home equity build. You can sell on the fact of ownership. And you can literally just sell them on the fact that they're quite literally going to own their power by literally paying no more than they're already paying right now. We're just taking the money they're already paying and we're able to invest that into a system instead of throw that money down the utility, down the drain, really. So that's, I guess, the concept of solar. Now, when it comes to doing a purchase, homeowners are also going to be eligible for something they call a 30% federal tax credit. Now, the 30% federal tax credit just comes as a credit to them when they file for their taxes. They're going to get back as a tax rebate from the government. So let's say, for example's sake, they get a $100,000 system, which is obviously generally not the cost. It's super expensive compared to like the average cost for solar. But let's just say $100,000 system. They get a 30% tax credit, which means now they're going to get $30,000 back in taxes from the federal government. That is only available for those people who are doing a purchase, okay? Which, again, we'll have to purchase it, or even if they finance it too, yeah, but we're going to have to deal with the high interest rates, with the high monthly payments and all these things. So, like I said, right now, best way to go, pitch PPAs. They're simple. They make sense. If you're going to deal with someone super analytical, purchase might be the best way to go. It just depends on the homeowner, but generally, most of the time, as of right now, PPAs are the way to go because we make more money too. Okay. All right. Now, the way that solar works, it's something called net metering. Okay. Now, net metering is going to be the buyback of power between the utility company and the homeowner. Okay. So let's say, for example, like I said, a homeowner will generate 1,000 kilowatts. Well, some of that power they use during the daytime, because obviously solar power doesn't work at night, but some of the power that they use during the daytime will obviously come from the system. So the system will generate power. They'll use some of the power. Anything extra that they use will then be sent back to the grid through their meter. And this is what they call net metering. So let's say, imagine we have their meter here. Every single time they use power, this meter, just imagine it's like a clock, running clockwise like a clock, right? All that happens is when you generate power, if you're generating more power than you're using, what you're going to be doing is sending that power back to the grid and it will now credit the bill, which means this clock now is going to run backwards. And as long as this clock goes backwards more than it runs forwards, then you're not going to pay an electric bill at all to the electric company. If anything, all you're going to pay is a base connection fee of 10, 15 bucks, and that's it. Other than that, all the power is just going to come from the solar and you'll be good to go. Anything extra will roll over to the next month that you can use in next months, which that's how it works in pretty much all the different states. Now, there's certain utility companies that have different regulations and different things of that nature, but that's why it's important that whatever area you're dialing, you understand the laws, the net metering laws of the utility companies, and how that actually works. Like, for example, say in California, it's not 1-for-1 net metering anymore. So that means that if we generate 1 kilowatt, it's not worth 1 kilowatt. It's worth less than 1 kilowatt. So that's why it's important that in California, we have to provide homeowners with a battery. Now, what that battery does, that battery stores the power. So that way, any excess power generated by the system, instead of sending it back to the grid, I'll send it to the battery. That way, at nighttime, when the homeowner comes home, they'll be able to use the power back from the battery and be fully self-sustainable just off of their solar system, instead of doing the net metering. They'll still do a little bit here and there, so they're still going to get a small bill, but with the majority of it, it should just be covered with the system as long as you're doing your job and sizing the system correctly. Um, versus in other states, like Florida, for example, it's 1-for-1. Anything extra at the end of the year, they get is cashback rebate, which is freaking awesome. Or Texas, Texas is a little different too because it's deregulated. Now, what does that mean? So we have your electric providers. This is just for Texas, for example. We have your electric providers, which provide the electricity, and then you have your electric companies. And these companies are the companies who actually sell the power to the consumer. So, in the way it works in Texas is it's deregulated, which means there's an endless amount of utility companies that you can choose from. They're all paying different rates. Some are high, some are low. So that's why it's kind of like playing the lottery dial in Texas, because like sometimes you'll find someone paying freaking like 30 cents per kilowatt, and then other times you'll find people paying like 12 cents. And it's like, so it's hit or miss. So some of the sets in Texas, they'd be like, if they're on a really high utility company, holy crap, like we can, get them solar, price them decently high and make a lot of money. Versus if we find someone who's on a super cheap rate per kilowatt, it's a little bit tougher to be able to sell them, which we still can. We have to price them lower, make less money, da 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 da. But I'd say that's just kind of how it works in the different markets, which you're going to be tested on this. So it's all going to be in the test. So just make sure that before you are dialing any certain area, you understand the net metering laws. You understand how it works with the utility companies. Also, the average rate per kilowatt that homeowners are paying, as well as also any additional rebates that the state provides. For example, there's certain states in the East Coast, like Illinois, or even East Coast states as well, that provide like New York, additional state credits. So a lot of them are called SRECs. Some of them is just an additional state tax credit they can receive. Make sure you're educated on this. Obviously, I can't go into every one of the different 50 states, but just make sure that before you're dialing any certain state, you understand the net metering laws, you understand how much they pay per kilowatt, you understand the sun hours, you understand like the insurance, like Florida, for example, you need insurance. There's a lot of little things in each different place that goes into it. But the main ones you're going to need to know, if you're, let's say, like exploring a market to dial, how much they pay per kilowatt. Okay. That's probably the most important. Well, that and the metering laws, but how much they pay per kilowatt, what are the net metering laws, and is there any additional rebates? If you can figure out those three things, generally you're going to be pretty good when you first get started. Okay, so that's it for the fundamentals. Yeah, that's it. So, all right, on to the next.